Hi, I'm Deane Madsen with Architect Magazine. I'm here this morning with Brit Probst of Davis Partnership Architects, and we're here to take you around the Denver Art Museum. What can you tell me about this entry sequence, coming into the museum, first time experience for visitors? What's the first thing they notice?
The stairway and the atrium space, naturally, and I think that's very much by design. The original museum, designed by Gio Ponti in the early 70s, a great building, but when you walk in, there really isn't an experience of an atrium and a sense for what's going on in the multiple levels of the building. So it was very much a desire of the museum, and always inherent in the design of this building, that you would come in and experience a tall space, see the levels up above, be called to use the stairs to weave your way up into the building.
So in designing the museum, what sort of structural processes were you using to inform the design, and how did everything come together with these amazing angles and different spaces that are created by the intersections?
It's really quite a unique structural system, and one that I had never considered before. But in Daniel Libeskind's design process, one of the seminal moments, I think, in their inventing this design was the notion of two planes that weave together to create space. These planes create the exterior forms. They create many of these large dividing walls that become integral to the architecture. Those planes are also the structure of the building. They were designed to be self-supporting, if you will, and so the planes, of course, aren't just concrete or something like that. They're structural steel.
Right.
They're trusses that cantilever from the ground in some cases. They support each other. They support the wall structures, the floor structures, the roof structure. They become the critical structural elements for the building.
So this bridge connects the new addition to the Gio Ponti structure. Maybe you can talk a little bit about the challenges of adding on to an existing museum and the additional challenges of having that addition be separated by a road.
Right. I think it really was one of the most significant issues when you think about adding on to a building, only you're adding on to it across the street.
Yeah.
And so obviously the bridge is an important connection from a pedestrian point of view, second level connected walkway. But I think the stronger move really has to do with the form of the building, because it was always clear that the new entry to the museum would be in the new wing. That had the atrium space. It had this very exciting architecture. But there was clearly a design intent on Daniel Libeskind's part to visually connect the new wing with the old wing, and not just functionally. So the bridge is certainly an important part of the architecture, but not nearly as important as the giant prow of the building that reaches out across 13th Street and towards the building.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of that. You know, think of the Sistine Chapel with Adam and God reaching their fingers out towards each other. A little bit of that tension here that's created with the design. So really, I think that strong gesture, I think people try to look at that and say, why would you create a building like that? And that sort of directional nod back to the existing building was exactly the reason why.
So in all museums, there's always the question of how you're going to display the artwork. I think in the Guggenheim in New York, there was the problem of the ramped walkway through it, and people were a little bit concerned that it might not be an optimal viewing condition, or how do you angle things right so people can look at it. Here, you have these walls going in all sorts of different angles, and I mean that must produce a real challenge for exhibition installations. I mean,
yes, and with every challenge, there's a great opportunity.
Sure.
So yeah, I think that is really one of the central questions that this building begs, is the role of art in architecture. And clearly, it was always the objective of the Denver Art Museum. They weren't looking for an architecture that was neutral in order to create the optimal art experience. They were looking for architecture that and it really changed the way you looked at the art. And so they embraced the idea of walls that slope and all that to create a really different kind of curatorial sense to the museum. Art that travels around the country and is seen in many, many different galleries. Comes to here, and the people say the experience is so different here. And I think that they say it in a very positive way, typically. The museum's staff that designs the exhibit, I think, has done a magnificent job of, over time especially, just really embracing the idea that the architecture creates really unique opportunities for how you display art in here. They embrace it, and I think they have really done a magnificent job of making it work.